teacher who was principal dancer in La Scala, and Mr. DeMarkov would say, "You are perfect for." I said, "Mr. DeMarkov, I am too old for strict ballet. I am 27 years old. I do not, just give me a nice routine that I can use." You know, so he gave me a routine, and I tried it out at the Ansonia Hotel, and it went over very well. So I looked in the phone book for agent, and I said, "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo." I picked Mo, and his name was Joe Williams. He wasn't the black Joe Williams. He was in 1650 Broadway. So I go to him, and I audition, and he said, "Nice little act, but it's not authentic." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "We're opening a school called Stairway to Stardom around the corner from the Americana Hotel. You know, you have time, you could walk around with me." I said, "Sure." So we walked around, and they were nailing in the floors and the mirrors and stuff. I still didn't know what it was about. He said, "We're going to have a big opening, and you're invited." Well, at that time, I was married. My husband didn't want me to dance. No boyfriend, no guy ever. You know, they get jealous. They don't want you to do it. But they couldn't stop me because it was within me. Nobody could have stopped me. So his friend Ralph was there. He's Puerto Rican. He said, "I'll go with you." I said, "Great, I got company." You know, we go down there, and Arthur Lugoff had a Middle Eastern band from the Village Gate, and all the dancers, Morocco, Jamila Omar, and they were beating the drums, and I loved the music, you know, Arabic, Turkish, and Greek music, and everybody, and we had a great time, and they had ordered all the sandwiches from Stage Door Deli, you know, and the girl that brought that dancing to this country, I don't know whether she was in Kismet on Broadway, she was Turkish. Who did she fall for? My friend Ralph. And he was telling her, "Yes, my family's from Spain. My name is Raul." I said, "Oh my God." But anyway, when the school opened up, I went there. Nobody showed up but me. I was the first student of the first belly dancing school in New York City. I took my 10 lessons. I was ready to go to work. I wanted to do any kind of dancing that there was out there. Jazz dance, I studied that at NYU. I studied jazz. I studied ballet. I studied Jeffrey Holder. When he first came here, he was teaching at the Henry Street Settlement. He was teaching the Douglas, the East Indian dance in Trinidad, from Trinidad, and I used to go there and study with him. But I went around to agent to agent to agent, and I could not get work. And I just was so disappointed. One day I'm walking, and I looked up, and it was an agency to get jobs, because I always took jobs in between. You know how a lot of actors and actresses, they take jobs as waitresses and waiters until their big break comes. Well, I went upstairs, and the man there said to me, "Can you type?" I said, "I won a certificate for fast typing in junior high school." He said, "Well, I'm going to send you over to this place, but don't say anything. I think they might take you. But if they don't say, come back. I promise you I will get you a job." So I go over there. And the man says, "Can you?" This was manual. This was not electric typewriter. So bang, bang, bang. And he said, "Can you type?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Take a test." I said, "Sure." Took a test. He said, "When can you start?" I said, "Right now." So here come the girls. "You want to go to lunch?" I said, "Oh, no, I have an appointment to meet." It wasn't true, but I was, you know. So I was the first black girl to work at Universal Films. This was a film distribution. And it was 1950. The distributors of films. And one thing you know, uptown here, they didn't show a lot of the films that they showed downtown. But it was a distribution, and they went on strike that week. I was marching down Broadway with them. I belonged to the union that the film guys, you know, they use the cameras.
Sure.
That was the union.
Yep.
So now, I was a good worker. I loved to work. I always worked. And a show came about. And you know, show business was in my heart. I was with this guy, Herbie Harper, who did Jazz Train. Herbie Harper did Jazz Train in Europe. And there was a beautiful girl, Barry Harris talked about it when he was here. Rose Hardaway. Rose Hardaway was gorgeous. And she was dancing in Atlantic City, because a lot of the chorus girls, after, you know, they work all over.
Sure.
And they were working in Atlantic City, and she was there. And Herbie Harper took her out of the chorus and gave her this dance, this jungle dance. And this was years later. They wanted to do a revival, and he wanted me to do that dance. So they were trying to find the backers to back the show. And they couldn't find the backers, so he comes to me and he says, listen, Irving C. Miller and Flornie Miller, that put on the first black musical on Broadway, Shuffle Along, is going to do a revival of the brown-skinned models. Now, the brown-skinned models were dancers that traveled throughout the South. And they call it the Chitlin Circuit. And they traveled from town to town doing one-nighters back in the day. And they wanted to do a revival at the Apollo Theater. And he was going to be the choreographer. So I got into that show. Then he calls me up to tell me they found the backers for Jazz Train. What do I want to do? I said, well, I would prefer to stay with this show because Eubie Blake was with this show. And Mantan Moreland, I don't know if you all remember him,
Sure.
used to be in all these Charlie Chan movies. But what struck me about a lot of these people were they were not rich. They were like struggling financially. And I just could not understand this because I thought I didn't want to be, like nowadays these kids going in, they'll ask you, can I be famous? Can I get rich? Those people did things out of the love of the art, of what they did, whether comedy or whatever. Well, I know Count Basie made money, but I'm saying just other performers, they performed because they loved what they did, including me. We didn't make a lot of money, but we loved what we did. So I told them,